Under my house, below the cracked concrete steps that lead into the basement, something waits for me. I don't know what name it was given before I was born, or if it even has a name that a human mouth could shape, but I know what it wants. It wants to be fed, and I feed it again and again, because to do otherwise feels like tearing the skin from my own body. The hunger doesn't belong to me, but somehow it coils around my own cravings until I can't tell the difference. Its emptiness has become my own. The first time I heard it was on a night when the wind was screaming through the trees and the lights kept flickering. I was younger then, still foolish enough to think that basements were only full of dust and broken furniture. The sound came from the far corner, where the floor dipped slightly, as though the earth itself had sagged under the weight of the house. It was a slow dragging noise, wet and heavy, like something shifting just beneath the concrete. When I crouched down with a flashlight, the beam trembled across a dark stain I had never noticed before. The stain pulsed, faintly, as if it were breathing. I told myself it was a trick of the light, or maybe a patch of mold blooming in some strange way. But when I turned to go back upstairs, I heard it, a low, whispering scrape that seemed to come not from the air, but from inside my head. I could swear it spoke a word, or maybe only a need, but I understood it without translation. Feed. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to the floorboards groan, each creak like footsteps circling my room. My mouth was dry, my heart thudding like a hammer buried in mud. At some point, I must have drifted into a shallow, broken dream, because when I woke, I knew what I had to do. Not because it told me directly, but because the knowledge was simply there, heavy and absolute. I had to bring something down to it, something alive. I started small, a rat caught in a trap, its body twitching and squealing as I carried it down the wooden steps. I remember my hand shaking so hard the creature nearly slipped from my grip. The moment I reached the corner of the basement, the air grew heavier, thicker, pressing down against my chest. The stain on the floor rippled as though it had become liquid. I dropped the rat onto it. The sound that followed haunts me more than anything else. It was a wet, tearing noise, accompanied by a sudden high-pitched shriek that didn't belong to the rat alone. Something opened beneath the surface of the floor, something like a mouth but not a mouth, and the rat was dragged down. The stain pulsed once, twice, then went still. I should have been horrified. I should have run from the house screaming. But instead, I stood there shaking, and what I felt most of all was relief. Relief that it was satisfied, at least for now. Relief that the whispering pressure inside my skull loosened its grip. And in that space, after the terror passed, there was something else. A thrill, a warmth that spread through my veins like fire. From then on, I couldn't stop. It began with more rats, then pigeons, then stray cats that wandered too close to the edge of the yard. Each time, I told myself it was just to keep the house safe, to quiet the voice that grew louder with every day of hunger. But deep inside, I knew the truth. I had started to crave that feeling, the way the floor shuddered when it fed, the way my body filled with a sick, molten energy afterward. I was no longer just keeping something alive down there. I was sharing in it. The basement changed, slowly but undeniably. The stain spread, veins of darkness crawling outward across the concrete like roots from a poisoned tree. The air down there was never dry anymore. It clung to my skin with a clammy dampness, and the smell was thick, metallic, like rusted iron mixed with spoiled meat. Sometimes, when I lingered too long, I swore I could see shapes moving beneath the surface. Limbs, eyes, things that twisted and dissolved before I could truly focus. But the most dangerous change wasn't in the basement. It was in me. I started to dream of it. Night after night, I saw myself kneeling before the spreading black stain, my hands cupped and bleeding, pouring life into the thing that waited below. And every time I woke, the craving grew worse. It was no longer enough to offer it scraps, the vermin and strays. I needed more. It needed more. The first time I took something larger, I told myself it was still just an animal. A dog that barked all night down the street. No one would miss it, I whispered, even as I carried its trembling body down the steps. The basement was alive with anticipation. I could feel the air pulsing, the walls almost vibrating. When the dog vanished into the blackness, the sound it made was so human that bile rose in my throat. But the rush afterward, God, the rush, was like drowning in firelight. My hands shook for hours, and I couldn't tell if it was fear or ecstasy. By then, the whispering was constant. At work, I could barely focus. The hunger pressed at me, insistent, curling its tendrils through every thought. People began to notice the shadows under my eyes, the way I jumped at every sound. I avoided their questions because how could I explain? How could I make anyone understand that there was something beneath my house that needed me, that loved me in its own monstrous way, and that without me it would starve, and so would I? Sometimes I wonder if I chose this, or if it chose me long before I ever heard its first whisper. Maybe the house itself was a lure, waiting for someone weak enough, desperate enough to listen. I think about moving, about burning the place to the ground, but even the thought sends a spike of pain through my skull so sharp I nearly scream. It won't let me go, and I don't want to go. That's the worst part. Last night, I sat at the top of the basement steps for hours, listening. The air was thick with the smell of earth and rot, and the stain below pulsed faintly in the darkness. It doesn't always demand out loud anymore. Sometimes, all it takes is silence between us, and I feel the hunger as if it were my own stomach twisting in agony. I brought nothing down last night. I just sat there, clutching the railing, trembling with the effort of holding back. But the hunger is still here, stronger now. It gnaws at me as I speak, curling around my thoughts, promising me relief, power, ecstasy if I just give it what it wants. And I know I will, sooner rather than later. Because the truth is, I'm not just afraid of it. I need it. I need that moment when the blackness opens and the world tilts into something deeper, hungrier, truer. Tonight, I will feed it again. And as much as I dread the screams, as much as I loathe the thing I've become, I can't stop smiling when I imagine the stain rippling open, ready to take what I offer. Because when it feeds, I feel alive. And I don't know how much longer I can resist giving it more than just animals, more than just strays, more than just things that no one will miss. It's waiting, and I am too. I tried to fight it. I swear I did. After that night, after sitting at the top of the basement stairs with my nails biting into the wood, I told myself I wouldn't feed it again. I'd break the cycle. I'd starve it, even if it tore me apart inside. For 3 days, I resisted. 3 days of pounding headaches, of hearing whispers slithering under every word people spoke to me. I could hardly leave my bed, and when I did, the floor felt unsteady beneath my feet, like the world had turned soft, unstable, ready to sink me down into the waiting dark. By the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I woke in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, the sheets clinging to me like damp skin. My throat was raw, as if I'd been screaming in my sleep. When I stumbled to the bathroom, I caught sight of myself in the mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the face staring back. My eyes looked wrong, sunken dark, gleaming with a feverish hunger that didn't feel entirely mine. And then the smell hit me, that smell of rust and rot, rising from the floorboards as though the basement itself was breathing through the cracks. I knew what it wanted. I knew what it would take to make the pressure in my skull ease. I left the house with trembling hands and returned an hour later with a rabbit, stolen from a hutch on the edge of town. I carried it down the stairs, heart hammering, every step heavier than the last. The moment I crossed the threshold into the basement, the whispers ceased, like a storm dying in an instant. The silence was almost tender, almost grateful. I dropped the rabbit onto the pulsing stain. It squealed, scrabbling at the concrete, and then it was gone. The floor rippled, split, and swallowed it whole. Relief slammed through me so hard I nearly collapsed. My knees buckled, my breath caught in my throat, and I laughed, a broken, strangled laugh that echoed through the basement. The thing beneath me pulsed once, in rhythm with my heart, and I swear I felt its satisfaction trickle into me like warm blood. But relief only lasts so long. The next morning, the hunger began again. Softer, yes, but it never truly left. It clung to me, an ache behind my ribs, whispering suggestions, coaxing me toward the inevitable. And this time, it didn't just want more, it wanted better. That's how it always goes. You start small. You tell yourself it's nothing. But the thing in the basement is patient, and it knows exactly how to erode your will. I noticed it when I passed people in the street. Strangers I'd normally ignore suddenly seemed different. I would watch the way their throats moved when they swallowed, the way their veins pulsed just beneath the skin of their wrists. My hands itched. My teeth clenched. I could almost see how they would look if I carried them down those stairs, how the floor would ripple and the blackness would open wide, wider than it ever had for rats or cats or dogs. I tried to shake the thoughts, but the hunger made them sweet, tempting, inevitable. That was when I began to hear it not just in my dreams, but in waking moments. Not whispers anymore, words. Faint, broken, echoing from the cracks in the basement floor. Sometimes I couldn't make them out, but sometimes, I swear it spoke my name. It was always at night when it grew the loudest. The house would groan around me, the smell of rot seeping up through the floorboards until I could taste it on my tongue. and then a voice faint and wet calling, "Come down, feed me, let me grow." And I would go. I told myself I was still in control. I brought it animals, always animals, even as the cravings twisted into something darker. I found myself wandering into alleys, searching for stray dogs, stray cats, anything to keep it satisfied. But every offering only stoked the hunger, never quieted it for long. And with each feeding, the basement changed more. The stain had spread nearly halfway across the floor now, dark tendrils snaking up the walls like veins. The air pressed against my chest like a hand, heavy and wet, making every breath feel stolen. Sometimes, when I stood too close, I thought I saw eyes opening beneath the surface. Dozens of them, hundreds, watching me, blinking in unison with my own heartbeat. And yet, I couldn't look away. The more it grew, the more it filled me. That fire in my veins after each feeding was stronger now, burning hot enough to make me tremble. There were moments, after the floor sealed shut again, when I felt like I could do anything, like my skin was too small to contain me. I was becoming something more than myself, something greater. That's when I stopped fearing it. No, that's not true. I still feared it, but fear became part of the addiction. The terror was sharp, intoxicating, wrapping around the hunger until they were indistinguishable. Last week, something happened that changed everything. I was walking home late, the streets empty, the air heavy with the promise of rain. That's when I saw her, a woman standing at the bus stop, arms wrapped around herself against the chill. She wasn't anyone I knew, just a stranger waiting for a bus that never came. And yet, the moment my eyes landed on her, the hunger inside me surged. It was different this time. Not just desire, not just craving. It was certainty. The thing in the basement wanted her, needed her, and deep down, so did I. I stood across the street, watching her, my hands trembling, my breath shallow. She looked up once, her eyes meeting mine for only a second before she turned away. But in that second, I imagined it all. The way her body would twitch in my grip, the way the floor would split wider than ever before, the way the whispers would turn into a chorus of satisfaction as she vanished into the dark. I didn't take her, not that night, but the thought hasn't left me since. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. Every time I walk into the basement, the whispers grow louder, more insistent. Bring her, bring her, bring her. I've tried to fight it. God help me, I've tried. But the hunger has its claws in me, and each day I resist, the pain grows worse. The headaches, the trembling, the gnawing emptiness that feels like it's hollowing me out from the inside. The thing in the basement is patient, but I don't know how much longer I can be. Last night, as I stood in the basement staring at the pulsing stain, I heard it clearly for the first time. Not just whispers, not just broken fragments, but full words, wet and terrible, echoing in a voice that almost sounded like mine. Bring me more. Bring me her. And I whispered back, without meaning to, without even realizing my lips had moved. Yes. The sound that followed was not laughter, not exactly, but it was pleased. And the walls of the basement shuddered with something that felt dangerously close to joy. I don't know if I can stop it anymore. And the worst part is, I don't know if I even want to. I told myself I wouldn't do it. I told myself the woman at the bus stop was just a fixation, just another symptom of the sickness this thing planted in me. For days, I avoided that street, avoided even looking at people too long. But it didn't matter. The hunger doesn't care about promises. The hunger doesn't care about guilt. It only grows. The nights became unbearable. The house moaned like it was sinking into the earth, every wall flexing with pressure. The smell of rot seeped up so thick I could taste it in my sleep. And the voice, God, the voice, never stopped. Sometimes it hissed, sometimes it crooned, sometimes it screamed so loud in my head that I woke with blood dripping from my nose. It wasn't begging anymore. It was commanding. Bring me her. It showed me things in my dreams. How her body would fall limp, how the blackness would open wide and drag her down, how her blood would seep into the stain and make it grow until it swallowed the entire floor. And in those dreams, I wasn't horrified. I was exhilarated. Every time the vision ended, I woke shaking, ashamed of the smile on my face. On the seventh night, I broke. I don't remember making the decision. One moment, I was staring at the ceiling, listening to the whispers. The next, I was standing outside in the cold, the sky heavy with clouds, my breath coming out in white bursts. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I drove without thought, without plan, straight to the bus stop. And there she was, just like before, waiting, shivering, arms wrapped around herself. The sight of her hit me like a drug. The hunger surged, burning through my veins, urging me forward. I pulled up, rolled down the window, forced a smile that felt wrong on my face. I don't even remember the words I used. Something about the buses not running. Something about offering her a ride. She hesitated, but in the end, she got in. The whole drive back, my heart was a hammer in my chest. She tried to make small talk, asked where I lived, what I did. I answered, though I couldn't hear my own words over the roar in my head. The whispers were almost ecstatic now, crooning, chanting, a dozen voices overlapping, urging me on. When we pulled into my driveway, she looked uneasy. "I thought you were dropping me at the next stop," she said. Her voice was tight, wary. I smiled again, though my hands trembled on the wheel. "Just come inside for a minute," I said. "It's warmer." The basement door was already open. I had left it that way without realizing. The air that drifted up was wet, metallic, pulsing like breath. She paused in the hallway, frowning, but I took her hand before she could protest. My skin was ice cold. I knew she could feel the tremor in me. I led her down the stairs. The moment we crossed the threshold, the air thickened. She coughed, gagged at the stench. "What is this?" she demanded, pulling her hand back. But it was too late. The stain was alive now, spreading, pulsing, the blackness splitting wider than ever before. A sound rose from it, wet and jubilant, vibrating through the walls. She turned to run. I caught her. I don't remember how. I only remember the feeling of her body thrashing against mine, her screams ripping through the basement. For a moment, I almost let her go. For a moment, I almost chose to fight it. But then the whispers surged into a scream, filling every corner of my skull, and the hunger tore the last shred of hesitation away. I dragged her to the center of the basement. The floor yawned open, black and endless, lined with things that pulsed and writhed, not teeth but something worse. She screamed once more before the dark swallowed her whole. The silence afterward was unbearable. For one heartbeat, I stood there trembling, horror crashing down on me. I had done it. I had given it what it wanted. A person. And then came the rush. It wasn't like before. This wasn't fire in my veins. It was a flood, a tidal wave that drowned me in heat and ecstasy. My vision blurred, my skin tingled, and for the first time, I felt it not just beneath me, but inside me. The thing in the basement wasn't separate anymore. It was part of me, and I was part of it. I fell to my knees, laughing and sobbing, my hands clawing at the pulsing floor. It whispered to me, louder than ever, clear and perfect, no longer broken fragments, but full sentences in a voice that was both mine and not mine. "You are mine. I am yours. Together we will feed." Since that night, the basement has not stopped growing. The stain has swallowed the entire floor, climbing the walls, creeping toward the stairs. The air in the house is thick with rot, heavy enough to choke. And the whispers, no, not whispers anymore. Voices. Hundreds of them, all speaking at once, chanting, demanding. I can't leave. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. Every time I step outside, the hunger drags me back, bending my body to its will. And the more it grows, the more I change. My skin itches constantly, my reflection in the mirror flickers, showing eyes that aren't mine, mouths where there shouldn't be mouths. It wants more. It always wants more. And I will give it more. Because the truth is, I want it too. The hunger is me now, and I am the hunger. Every person I see is no longer a stranger, no longer someone with a life, a family, a future. They are offerings. They are sustenance. Last night, as I lay in bed, I felt the floorboards tremble. I heard the voices rise together in a single, perfect chorus. Not whispers, not commands, but a promise. Soon, the basement won't stay in the basement. It will spread, through the house, through the street, through the town. And when it does, I will stand at the center of it, the chosen vessel, the feeder, the one who opened the door. And I will smile, because I am not afraid anymore. I am hungry,